Welcome to the Global Flag Football League podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the Global Flag Football League podcast. Today, we're joined by the incredible Dr. Marjorie Herrera Lewis, author, journalist, former coach, and now the commissioner of the Global Flag Football League. Marjorie has made history throughout her career, from being the first female beat writer to cover the Dallas Cowboys, to coaching college football at Texas Wesleyan University. She's also the author of When the Men Were Gone, a powerful novel based on a true story about a female football coach during World War II. Now, as the commissioner of the GFFL, Marjorie is helping lead the charge in the growth and elevation of flag football and helping to shape the future of the sport. In this episode, Marjorie shares her journey through sports journalism, her transition to coaching, and her vision for the future of the GFFL as the league prepares to revolutionize flag football. Marjorie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, glad to have you on.
And
Marjorie,
thank you for that introduction. I don't know. I might need to hire you as my PR guy.
I'm all for it. You make it easy, though. You make it easy.
Thank
So, Marjorie, before we dive into everything you've accomplished, from coaching college football to writing award-winning fiction, I want to take it back to the very beginning of your career in sports journalism. We know that breaking into that world as a woman, especially in the 80s, came with its own set of challenges, I'm sure, right?
Oh,
So,
it absolutely did.
yeah.
Yes.
So, what was sports journalism landscape like for women when you started, and have you seen it evolve over the years?
Well, when I started, there were very few of us.
Oh,
In fact, in '86, you've probably heard of Christine Brennan,
hmm.
Leslie Visser, some of the other women across the country that were covering sports at the time. We all got together and we formed the Association for Women in Sports Media, just
Wow.
so we had sort of a little support group. And we would get together once a year at a convention somewhere. And we first started in Oakland, then we went to Baltimore, then we came to Dallas, and we saw it grow, which was nice because then we knew more women were getting into the business.
Yeah.
But it was so rare, really, to see women covering the NFL, covering football, covering any sport. In
Yeah.
fact, in 1986, when I was hired by the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, they had a woman that had had bylines before, but she wasn't hired specifically to be a sports writer. So I was the first one they hired specifically to be a sports writer. And I
Wow.
think in 1986, you would think that that was kind of long overdue,
Yes.
but it was nice. I got that opportunity
Yeah.
and just worked as hard as I could and did everything I could to make a go of it. I really loved it.
Right, right. No, I'm sure. I mean, because like we mentioned in the intro and doing research, you were the first female beat writer to cover the Dallas Cowboys in 1986. What do you remember most vividly about that experience, and how did you handle the pressure of being a pioneer in that space?
Well, it's funny. I had to have access to the locker room at practices. So I remember going to the locker room for the very first time. And
Yeah.
the way that Tom Landry had it designed at the time, instead of one big open room, it was four like quadrants
Okay.
and different positions, and then a little space in the middle, and then the quadrants again.
Hmm.
And I remember going the first day, and then the second day I went and I noticed that curtains were up everywhere. Good, thank you. There were signs everywhere, do not leave areas without some clothing.
Right.
And so there were no embarrassing moments.
Got
People
it.
always go, "Oh, you were the first woman in the locker room." Well, there were no embarrassing moments.
Wow.
Everybody was very professional and it was great. And I do have to tell you this gives you a sense of what the Cowboys were like. Um, if you remember Everson Walls,
Hmm.
he was a veteran at that point when I started, but I was interviewing one of the players in one of the quadrants, and I had my back to everybody else. All I could see was the player that was at his locker, and I was doing the interview. Well, when I was done with the interview, one of the rookies tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "I'm so sorry." And I looked, I go, sorry for what? And he said, "For changing while you were in the locker room." And I said, "Oh, I never even saw you." And he said, "Well, Everson saw me and he told me that I had to apologize because,
Oh,
that was just not acceptable."
yeah.
So they were very professional. It was 86 was when they had lost their winning streak. They had
Right.
that 20-year, winning streak. So I had to write a lot of hard stories about
Mm.
the guys were getting older and they were maybe losing a step. And, the second half of the season, they went 1-7. So there were a lot of hard stories, but but
Yeah.
they knew I wasn't making anything up. I was very fair. It was strong assessments, but no cheap shots, and
Right.
expected that. So it was a good experience.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. I mean, I love that they were respectful towards you,
Yeah,
because
they
especially
were.
with it being brand new for them too, it had to have
Yes.
been the challenge, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, some of them were saying they would even tell me, "We're so glad we finally have a female beat writer. We've joined the 80s,"
Right.
because some of the other teams on the East Coast already had, and stuff.
Yeah,
So it was very welcoming, but again, it was tough.
right.
Sometimes they didn't want to talk to the media, and they're just things you have to deal with. But no complaints from me.
Right. Oh, that is amazing. And how long were you doing that for?
I did that for 4 years.
Four
And then
years.
I
Wow.
left and I went to the Dallas Morning News. I continued to cover the NFL and the Cowboys, but not as a beat.
Okay.
And by then I had become a mom and my schedule got a little bit more
You're
balanced.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. 4 years. That is great. Well, while many of you know you for your writing, something that really stands out in your journey is your time as a football coach. And I cannot wait to talk about this. So, not many people could say they've made an impact on both, the sidelines and the sidelines of journalism, right? What
Yeah, I feel
inspired?
like the paper lion. Remember that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What inspired you to start coaching football, and how did that opportunity come about?
Well, okay, so I was always a student of the game,
Okay.
because I played flag football in high school and college, but I didn't play tackle. And so I wanted to learn about football as much as I could. And Tom Landry and I had great conversations, and we
Yeah.
would talk about some opponents, like idiosyncrasies and things like this that we would see on film. And so I just always considered myself a student of the game. And then I found out about a woman who coached, like you mentioned earlier, that I wrote the book on. Her name was Tylene Wilson. She
Yeah.
coached football in Brownwood, Texas during World War II. And I researched her story. So while I was writing her book, I found out that Texas Wesleyan was bringing football back for the first time since 1941.
Wow.
And I thought, hmm, I'm kind of motivated by Tylene being a coach, and I've been a student of the game just like she had been, and maybe I can help out in some way. So I reached out to the head coach, and he asked me, "What position would you like to assist us with?" And I said, "Well, I was a wide receiver in high school and college, so I kind of like to coach wide receivers."
Hmm.
And he says, "Okay," and he immediately assigned me to defensive backs and linebackers.
The
Ah,
opposite,
coaches.
huh?
Yes, yes.
Uh,
And so that's how I ended up there. I was with them for 1 year. I would have stayed longer, but that was the 17 season. And then 18, my novel was coming out in October of 18. And my publisher, HarperCollins, asked me to, if I could possibly keep myself free so
yeah.
that I can travel. And so, of course, coaching and traveling for your book, that's not a good match.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I left coaching and really went full speed into promoting the book and in that direction. But I found that the guys, if they feel like they don't care if you're a woman at the time, look at this. I'm no 20-year-old. I was 60 years old
Yeah.
in 2017 when I was coaching. And they weren't looking at me like some, old lady here, just trying to hang out around the football field. They were very respectful as
Awesome.
well, and they really responded to my coaching.
Yeah.
I really was pleased there too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. It's amazing that they were, respectful in that manner. And,
They were.
I've had girl coaches in the past as well. And we did the same thing. We did not look at them, whether it was a woman or man, and
Yeah,
you're in that position for a reason, right? They wouldn't have put you
exactly.
there if you didn't know what you were talking about.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So they were, and I ran them through some tough drills and things,
Yeah.
and they were always appreciative, because you just weren't going to let up. You wanted to get them ready, and you wanted to try to win. We didn't win on the
Yeah.
field that season. We got some forfeits later, but it was still a great experience.
Yeah, definitely. So you said DBs and linebackers?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Now that is amazing. Did it take some research to do, being that you played receiver and then learning the
Well,
other
I
side of the
did
ball?
because I'm always researching.
Right,
Even if I
right.
had been a receivers coach, I would have been researching. I
Of
mean, I
course.
read books constantly. What are some of the newer ways to coach, the scouting academy. I'd look at what the scouts look for. I mean, I was just going into everything.
Yes.
And the thing that was really interesting now, just imagine this. So Texas Wesleyan is a small NAIA school in the heart of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a football field yet because they were just bringing it back. So we practiced at the local high school that was pretty much right next door, but we had to practice in the morning before the kids started arriving for school. So we would get there at like 5:30 in the morning, and we would practice under the lights. You could hear rooster nearby. I mean, it was very surreal. You look
Yeah.
back at it and it was so surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I played NAI in Montana, and it's just like, there's some great competition in the NAI,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So
Yes.
what
Mhm.
we I notice is a lot of players, it makes it's almost like the junior college level where players, will go that route first and then make their way to Division 1 or,
Right.
but
Yeah.
so you do
Mhm.
get a lot of like big time talent once in a while in those divisions, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys were, looking for an opportunity at a new school, hoping that
Yes.
maybe they could get to the next level. But
Right.
a lot of them too were, I'm here, I'm committed, and let's see what happens.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for touching on that. I
Oh,
want to transition a little bit to talking about your book. You mentioned When
mhm.
the Men Were Gone. What inspired you to write that book?
Well, I wasn't necessarily inspired. I was hit with a 2x4. I
Really?
I had been going to an allergist for my allergies, just horrible, for like 26 years. I'm
Yeah.
going to the same doctor. And I always wore blouses instead of t-shirts. I never wore a t-shirt.
Okay.
And it took me 26 years to wear a t-shirt to the doctor's office. And I was wearing the alma mater of my older daughter, and it said the University of Tulsa football. Well,
Mm.
this nurse that I had seen for 26 years started telling me, "Oh my gosh, you love football. I love football." We started talking about football. And then she said, "My great aunt coached football." She told me the whole story. And
Wow.
that was the 2x4. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, I have to write this." So I asked her, I kept asking her questions. In fact, the other nurse said, "Why don't you guys just enjoy your conversation? I'll take the rest of the pages."
Yeah.
She was very nice.
Awesome.
So I asked Jean Van Waters all these questions about Tylene Wilson, her Aunt Tylene. And by the time I left the appointment, I asked her if I could write her aunt's biography. And
Wow.
she was like, "Absolutely, yes." So I started doing research and discovered that too much of the story had been lost to time. There was enough to write a good story, but not enough to do a biography. So
Got it.
so I decided to write a novel and create based on a true story with all these things I knew to be true, but then kind of create the story. But I was a journalist and I wrote AP style, journalism style.
Right.
I'm not a novelist. So I thought, well, how do I make it sound like a novel? So I decided to go and get a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing Fiction.
Wow.
And I studied with all of these incredible novelists. Now, I did it up in New Hampshire, and all these novelists were great and published in bestsellers and everything. But when I got there my first semester, I just thought, nobody here understands Texas football.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I came to the wrong place. And then one professor came up to me like 2 days after, and she said, "I get it." She said, "I'm from Nashville and I went to Auburn and
Mm.
I get it." And
Yeah.
she became my lead professor through the whole
Wow.
program.
Oh,
Mhm.
that is amazing. Not many people would go and get a degree in something to accomplish going and writing a novel. That is amazing. I
Well,
mean, it's
that's true. And a lot
yeah.
of people, told me, "Couldn't you figured it out yourself?" and all that. And you know what? If I were just writing a novel, not based on a true story, not based on a person who really lived, I might have just tried to do it myself. But
Yeah.
this was a real person, and I felt this ethical obligation to actually do it the best I could, and I didn't want to wing it. And
Yes.
so that's what really was the driving force.
Right. Well, I'm sure that made her feel great, that you did that for her great, you said your great aunt, right? I
And
mean,
yeah, she felt guilty though. She's like, "Oh my
oh,
God, now you're paying all this tuition for 60 credit hours in college." Well, HarperCollins ended up picking up the rest. They paid me back what I paid originally, and it all
right.
worked out.
I was just gonna say it paid off, right? I mean, you
It
received
did.
multiple awards for it, and so
Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
what kind of feedback have you received from it?
Oh, it's been great. It's been
Yeah.
great. In fact, Mandalay Pictures is now doing the film version. And I just got the finalized script about 3 days ago. I had a different finalized script, then they revised it, and now I got this one. And it is just a home run. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
they have done an incredible job. They hired a screenwriter that has a lot of credits in Hollywood already. And so she knows what she's doing. And the producers are fantastic and Mandalay Pictures, everything. So it's, I originally, when one of my sisters asked me, what do you hope to accomplish with this book? I said, well, I hope I sell at least 50 copies, 25 of which are not to my family.
Yes.
But it's far exceeded, and I'm
Right.
grateful because I want people to know about Tylene. I
Yeah.
really want people to know about what she did and how ahead of her time she was. What a
Right.
strong and inspirational woman.
Yeah. I mean, women really had to step up in all different facets, right? And a lot
They
of people probably
did.
didn't think about flag or about football at that time,
About
right?
football. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's great when you're a Rosie the Riveter, but when you're on the sidelines at the largest gathering place in a small town and you have a woman walking the sidelines in a dress, heels, and a string of pearls, you
Yes.
can expect there was going to be some resistance to that one.
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely right. You know, I one of my favorite movies is A League of Their Own, so
Oh,
I
I
cannot
loved it.
wait to see
Yes.
that movie come out and
Oh,
obviously
thank
read your
you.
book as well. Yeah. So that is
A
so
league of
amazing.
their own, I mention it a lot of times when I
Do
give
you?
speaking engagements because that's my dad and he taught me baseball. He taught me how to catch his curveball when I was like 9. And to see that scene with the father-son playing catch, I just can't get through it without just, boo-hooing.
Tearing up, right? Yes, no,
Mhm.
absolutely. I cannot tell you how many times I've watched that, but it's true. I mean, women really did step up, and it is it was really a big time or point in time, right, when all of that was happening and helped
Oh,
women kind of
definitely.
transition, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
was hard for some to go back. I mean, Tylene
Yes.
would like to have stayed coaching.
Yeah. Right. No, I'm sure. No, that is amazing. Thank you so much for touching that, Marjorie. And I cannot wait for it to come out. And again, like I said, I hope a lot of people can pick up your book. And if they haven't heard of it and haven't picked it up yet, I really hope that they do. And I'll make
Oh,
sure there's
thank
a link
you.
in the show notes so people can access that.
Appreciate that. Thank
Yes,
you.
of course. So I want to shift gears again. So you're continuing to make an impact in football through your work as now the commissioner of the Global Flag Football League, right? So
Right.
what excites you most about the growth of flag football and how did you get involved with the GFFL?
Okay. Well, first of all, when I was in high school, there were not a lot of teams for girls. The administration wasn't going around doling out all these, opportunities.
Right.
So we had to advocate for ourselves. And so we went and we told the administration we wanted a girls flag football team. They said, okay, we got one. And then we looked around, we're like, we're the only one in the state. And so who are we going to play? So we went to the local public school and told them, will you have a team too? And they said, yes. So for like 2 or 3 years, all I played was one team all the way
Wow.
through high school, but we got to play and it was
Yes.
so much fun. Then we go to college and we play and I got to play intramurals
Hmm.
and loved it. So already there is an established love for flag football.
Right.
That was so established. Then what happens? The GFFL comes along and I knew some of the people that were getting involved in it and expressed my interest in wanting to be involved. And then, of course, Jay Lawrence, the
Yep.
founder, and I know you've already had him on the show.
Hmm.
He contacted me and we talked and then I got word that a lot of people that people had spoken to had spoken highly of me. And so I ended up as commissioner and I'm really grateful for that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, I really do feel like they have all the right people in place, right? And the pieces in place for it to be successful.
I think everything's in place to be successful. Now there are a lot of look what happened to beta, versus VHS and all this.
Right.
So you hope that even though you're in the right place, that you're also in the right time at the right because everything's to be seems to be aligning itself well. And I don't see any reason for it not to be hugely successful.
Yeah.
We just hope that all the pieces do fall into place, and that's where it takes us.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when I had Lene Cook Braxton on the podcast earlier, she mentioned the same thing. She said there's room for everybody. It's not that we have to, of course, we want to be the biggest and the best, of course. And that's everybody's, goal, of course, but
Right.
at the same
Mhm.
time, there's room for everybody. It's taking over the world with the Olympics coming
Yes,
up.
it
It's
is.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
it should be because it's a wonderful sport. I mean, it's
Yes.
long overdue. I mean, I've already told you how old I was when the book came out. You do the math. I'm 67 years old now. I played in 1975. In 1973 is
Yeah.
when 72 actually was my first. How many years is that? That's over 50 years ago. I mean,
Right.
that's insane that we were playing flag football in the 70s and it's taken this long for it to kind of gain the momentum
Yeah.
that it could have gained a long time ago. But finally, and I'm just glad it's here. I'm just
Right.
glad.
No, you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Why is it so important for young women to see themselves represented in flag football though? And what impact do you hope the GFFL will have on the next generation of athletes?
Well, I think there are a lot of it's kind of a sport that is for everyone. I
Yeah.
mean, certainly there are going to be people that never drop the ball. There are going to be some outstanding receivers. There are going to be
Yes.
some quarterbacks that can place it exactly where it needs to be and things like
Right.
that. There are always going to be superstars. But you can everybody can play this regardless of your level of athleticism. You might this is something that's really for everyone. And I love the fact that women are going to have this opportunity because a
Yeah.
lot of it, I look back at my mom. She was in high school in the 40s. She is such a great athlete. She was an incredible athlete, but she didn't have opportunities. I
Right.
had a few more opportunities than she did, but not a lot. And
Yeah.
so the more we see women having opportunities, and now I can't even tell you, when I was covering the Cowboys, I would talk to some of these guys and I'd say, man, where'd you get your skill from? Your dad, play, your mom, I can't even tell you how many said, my mom was the better athlete. She just didn't have opportunities.
Wow.
She was the better natural athlete. I heard
Yes.
that over and over and over, and I'm still hearing it today. So now girls will have this chance. Girls, women, I mean, it's just, I just am so excited. And I have such a passion for flag football. And if I were, younger, I would be at those combines and in the all 22, I'd want to
Yes.
play. I'd want to.
Yes. Yeah, you'd be signed up for sure, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so maybe once all of it gets going, then we're going to have the geriatric conference, and then I can join that.
You're hilarious. No, I think that it's going to be amazing for women and like you said, for everybody. I
Yeah.
have three daughters of my own, and I know that my oldest plays flag football, and she's just
Oh,
in love with
yeah.
it. And so I asked her the other day, just a side note, I was asking her, what are the couple sports, we're moving to a different city soon, and I said, what are the three sports if you could choose, would be the ones you want to pick? And she said softball, flag football, and gymnastics. And she said
That's
flag football, and she's like, she
fantastic.
absolutely has to be on a
Mhm.
flag football team. And I'm like, all right, you got it.
Good.
But
Oh, I love
it's for that
that.
opportunity, because they can play it as at a young age and they don't have to just like you said, you only got to play one team. I feel like that's even with wrestling and with other women's sports, it's finally gaining traction, right? And so
Yeah.
the opportunity for them to have scholarships in college and then
Right.
now eventually in a professional league that they can potentially, get to
Exactly.
is goals, right?
Yes. And when you say opportunity and how women's sports are getting, not only are women getting opportunity, but people are following them and seeing what incredible athletes,
Yes.
and so it's not just okay, let them have their little games.
Right.
No, this is real.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. I
Mhm.
think on the last interview was doing, I was talking about how my daughter, we were watching the 18, I think it was 18U national championships, and it was like Texas versus, or no, Vegas versus Florida.
Uh-huh.
And my daughter was just glued to the TV, and I was
Oh,
too. I was like, man, these
absolutely.
girls are just dropping dimes and they're catching
Yes,
some amazing catches.
exactly.
Oh, it was so great. We were hooked, immediately.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to see what it's going to be and grow into is going to be
Oh, yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
It just makes me so sad how many generations haven't had this
I
opportunity.
know.
And
I
like I
know.
said, my mom was such a good athlete and she could spot the good athletes. I remember one time I was 18 and my mom was in the den and she called me and Marjorie, come on in here. You got to see something. And she looked at the TV. She pointed to the TV. It was a tennis match with two women. She pointed to one of them and she said, she is one day going to be a superstar. And she was just not a superstar at the time.
Yeah.
She is going to be a superstar. And I asked mom, what's her name? And she said, Martina Navratilova.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
my gosh, she became the biggest
Well,
Wimbledon champion of all time,
right.
all these records broken and everything. And she was still in her just got to America chubby phase and all that when my mom said no.
Right.
And I've told Martina that story, and she goes,
Have
"What
you?
could you possibly have seen in me at that
Yeah.
time?" I'm like, "My mom knows.
Yes.
She knows,
She
but she
knew.
couldn't
Absolutely.
play, you know?"
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
well, that that's an awesome story. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I'm excited to see where it takes off to. I did want to ask you, can you tell us more about your role with DBTV and what drew you to
Yeah,
be a part of
DBT.
that platform?
Yeah, DBTV is, as you know, it's a streaming network. It's a free network. And so it kind of a throwback to when we had the ABC, CBS,
Yeah,
NBC, and advertising paid for everything. But Marnie Schneider and Scott Murray and I have been doing for a while now a show, a
yeah,
sports talk show, interview show on DBTV. Marnie's the one that made the connection with David Bruner,
got it.
and then we fell in love with it, and we decided that the network had a lot of potential. And so the three of us bought interest in the network. So we have a little tiny, network, us.
Yeah,
Um, but it's a great network that we believe in. We think has a lot of opportunity, not necessarily just in sports, just because we're sports people,
right.
but in other kinds of travel shows, cooking shows, all kinds of things. So we got involved, and the majority owner, David, he he gives us a lot of say in operations, and
Awesome.
he's good to work with.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So is there going to be collaboration between DBTV and the Global Flag Football League?
Still in some talks.
Okay.
There we don't know at this point, yes or no yet.
Got it. Got it. Oh, that's
Mhm,
amazing.
mhm.
Well, Marjorie, this has been so great. Thank you so much for joining today. I really do appreciate it. I did want to ask you, how can listeners get involved and learn more about the GFFL?
Well, we've got our website that they could follow, and then gffl.pro. So not .com, but .pro league.
Yes.
We'll be paying people to play. That's pretty
Yes,
exciting.
ma'am.
And then, they can just get in touch. Well, Jay is the point man at Jay at gffl.pro. And then, get tuned in, watch your show, find
Yeah.
out everything that's going on, and then get tuned in when we've got our tournament in Las Vegas in August.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, again, Marjorie, thank you so much for joining today and sharing all of that. And, again, I'll make sure that all this is in the show notes to make it a little easier on the listeners, especially your book as well.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, thank you again for joining, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. Thank you, Dylan.